This is Find Your Flow, a show about navigating the complexities of life and business through the lens of curiosity. I'm your host, Angelique, and I bring together experts to deliver responsibly curated conversations and perspectives that aim to progress people and the planet. Burnout. While it might feel like a buzzword at this point, the reality is it is at an all-time high. It is affecting folks both at work and at home. And coming off the heels of the pandemic, healthcare workers are still the ones feeling the brunt of it. So today's topic on Find Your Flow is dedicated to our healthcare heroes and discussing ways we can make our healthcare system an environment where compassionate care can be delivered by the people who are they themselves whole and supported. So our guest today, I first connected with during our certification program at the Duke Integrated Health and Wellbeing Institute. Amna is a double board certified physician and an integrative wellness and life coach, where she helps busy professionals and healthcare workers prioritize their wellness to find joy and fulfillment. So, with her own personal journey of burnout and moral injury, she uses her unique perspective as a practicing physician and coach to provide a personalized support to clients, enabling them to shift their mindset and achieve their goals. And before we introduce Amna here, I do want to mention that this discussion with is not medical advice. So please seek out care from your personal healthcare providers. The opinions and thoughts expressed are her own and not reflective of any current or past employers in the medical industry. So, Amna, without further ado, I want to thank you for joining us today. Thank you for sharing this very important topic. And, let's dive right in. Tell us more about what brought you to this space in your own personal journey.
Thank you for your kind introduction, Angelique. I think that there's not like one specific moment, but a series of many moments in which I recognize that as a healthcare worker, how poorly my own wellness was at that time. And honestly, the deepest parts of burnout is where I was at and slowly climbing myself out from that hole, sort of in a bootstrap pattern, but also with the help of my own coaches. So that's how I found my way towards wellness. And there were a lot of other things that happened during that time as well, which made me recognize that really no one else was coming to save me. And I had to make that decision to not only advocate for myself, but truly also advocate for my colleagues and work towards creating a system in which I am providing some support in a way where other individuals, especially our patients, can also find a compassionate care.
Remarkable. In this space, what are some of the obstacles to providing compassionate care? I mean, work long hours. There's a lot going on. I mean, we can talk about all the things happening, but I mean, what are some of those obstacles that you think healthcare workers specifically face right now?
I think we need to like step back. And when we look at the healthcare system as a whole, a system is only as good as the people that work in it and the people that it serves. So when we talk about compassionate care, well care, overall things being done right, we have to ask ourselves that question, that are the people that are working in it and the people that we're serving, are they feeling good about it? And I mean, without throwing any stats out there, at this time, the general sentiment is no.
Mm.
Burnout is at an epidemic level right now in healthcare workers. If I was to just use statistics for physicians, only about half of physicians that are right now would actually, if given the option, want to be physicians, like if they were to go back in time, according to a recent survey that was published by the AMA. So 53.7% as compared to like some 72% in 2020, just in the span of 2 years. I think those are really shocking stats.
Well,
And like I said, not just physicians, right? It's also other healthcare workers, your PAs, nurse practitioners, your nurses. And I cannot finish any sentence without acknowledging our direct care workers, such as CNAs, that are providing so much of the firsthand care to patients in the hospital, to patients in nursing homes and long-term care facilities. So it's that burnout is happening. And then on the other side, we have the patients, the people that we're supposed to be serving. And they're feeling both as somebody who is a patient as well as a physician. I've been on both sides of this equation, and it's not fun. So when you're a patient, you're experiencing lack of access, lack of, actually that compassionate care. The visits seem rushed. They seem like the physician is there, but they're really not there.
Right.
Right. That's kind of the way I look at it.
Yeah. And I might even add consistency.
Mhm. Yeah.
And it's startling because we are at a point with, I mean, we have an aging population, rapidly aging, and so many leaving the healthcare system. I think you and I had talked about the book Being Mortal, where a lot of it is the scary reality of with so many leaving the healthcare system and so many more people aging, we've got to figure something out because there's not going to be care for folks. The bottom line, we need to care for the folks caring for us. Let's focus on some solutions here. I know that in the corporate and the business and the enterprise world, there are so many wellness programs and initiatives and things that people are putting out there. Download this app, go do yoga. How does that differ, or does it, in the healthcare space? And are there any initiatives that you see working right now to address this issue?
Yeah. So that's a great question. And to that, I would say blanket, there is an increased recognition for the wellness initiatives to be taken. Now, what that might actually look like is very different on different levels. So I will say all large organizations, the American Medical Associations, American College of Physicians, American College of Graduate Medical Education, all these larger entities are working towards curriculums and creating spaces that do offer some sort of wellness for physicians. And I see a similar thing happening with nurses as well as other institutes. So yes, I do see that there is an increased awareness, and it's honestly it's very nice to hear and see all that. And that push is there. Now, the application and the variability on how that looks like right now, it's very variable. So it can go from, all right, we have to do a wellness something to like, okay, everybody stop doing your extremely busy work. And I know that this is like the 30 minutes you have for eating lunch. We're going to have like a presentation, a PowerPoint, and we're going to tell you how to be more resilient. Whereas clearly the people that work in healthcare, especially your physicians, are already resilient people. They already had to delay a lot of gratification. They're in it for the long run. They really want to care for people. So teaching somebody that resilience is really not going to be helpful. It reminds me like of a very like nice quotation by Dr. Heather Farley, where she said that you can't take the canary out of the coal mine, teach it resilience skills, and stick it back into the coal mine and expect it to survive. I'm paraphrasing, but this was what she had said, and it really resonated with me.
Not to mention, we're doing this via PowerPoints. We're
Yes.
take 30 minutes out of your 24-hour schedule that you're working all day. And yeah, there's something, there's a term that I'd heard, well, where there's well-meant well-being. How do we reshape this a little bit? Because this is the same problem that you hear corporations having. How can we shift how we integrate wellness into day-to-day lives without making it a chore?
Yeah. Yeah. Let me just start by giving a personal example. So I trained at Cleveland Clinic, and I was also a patient at Cleveland Clinic. And I was a resident at the time where I had pretty serious diagnosis come up while I was pregnant. And this is an example of how things go when people and leaders are truly invested in your wellness. So I had I have zero burnout and a zero traumatic experience from what happened during that time, which could have been potentially a very scary time for me.
Of course.
Um, I'm fine. The baby is fine. She's 6 years old now. So, but that time it was really stressful. But as my program director at that time, Dr. Spencer, big shout out to her. She, introduced the concept of counseling to me. And then she said, you have to go. And then it was counseling slash coaching. And don't have at that time didn't have any prior mental health diagnosis or anything, of concern. She said, This is for your wellness. This is what you need to do at this time to process and help you so that later on you're not having issues. And I had protected time as a medical trainee to go to those sessions. I also, as a patient at the Cleveland Clinic, had access without financial concerns because I was still a medical trainee with Build to go and get world class care from my neuro ophthalmologist, from my OB, and had protected time to go to those visits. As a result, 9 months later, delivered a healthy baby and, recovered well, only have good things to say about that entire experience. And I was reflecting that for 9 months, I didn't know if I was actually going to maintain my vision. It was a sight-threatening problem. So, knowing that, it's pretty traumatic to be in, like, that situation for 9 months, but I
Yeah.
honestly feel okay. Like, I don't carry anything from that time with me because my organization, supported me in all ways. So, I think that's an example of how things go when things work well.
Showing up as humans and leading as humans. That's remarkable, and it goes to show you had an amazing, doctor. What was her name?
Spencer.
Doctor Spencer. She saw you as a human, and as you were kind of describing it, it's almost I was envisioning us having some sort of, like, how The Sims, where they have, like, a little monitor above
Yeah.
them, like, where is our battery?
Yeah.
Where are we? And as
Wow.
leaders, being able to recognize, okay, well, this is their workload. You're seeing it. You can't not see it when it comes down to when a person is at burnout.
Mhm.
Workflower, how they respond is different. How they look can be different. I
Yeah.
mean, everything can be very, I guess, apparent to leaders in those times or not. But I love to hear that you had leadership at that time that saw you and cared for you. And the two biggest things that I love to hear about this too is you had protected time
Mhm.
and did not have the financial concern of having access to these resources. That is, I think there's a lot of programs that are out there that are prioritizing that and allowing employees to have access to these things. I think it still goes back to leadership and building kindness and the importance of kindness, if not say the absolute necessity of kindness in the workplace. Because I wonder so many times, like, how many more people could have had that experience if
Yeah.
leadership was able to recognize something like that.
That's a really good point, Angelique, because also when you say leadership, I think that's where I for lack of a better word, where the money is because when you have the people that are leading an institute and a healthcare organization that are not outsiders, that are physicians, it's
Mhm.
physician led, that are healthcare workers, you have nurses there, you have other healthcare providers, physical therapists, nurses, like all of them, that they're there and
Right.
they have leadership roles. It's not like somebody from outside taking over autonomy and then telling you what to do,
Mm.
because we also know that lack of autonomy is one of the leading causes of burnout. Because when you feel like what you do doesn't matter and what you want to do, you can't do,
Right.
that is like a big contributor. So having good leaders is so, so important. And then it's not just like, hey, let's get good leaders and then not care for those leaders because we should be supporting the good
Yeah.
leaders.
Yeah.
We should destigmatize those leaders asking for help. Those leaders need to have like actual coaches, not just like, here's like executive leadership 101, like true consistent support so that they can work and heal whatever happened to them all, during the time. And so that that cycle of like trauma and just like, okay, back
Yep.
in my day, nobody slept for like 2 weeks. And then they just keep perpetuating that. So that
The
is so
picture
important.
that they wear acting as though, like, that's not cool, bro. Like,
Yeah.
not cool.
Yeah.
But it happens, and that's part of the
Mhm.
health industry, and yeah, that's you say purpose and freedom too, and I think that's an interesting viewpoint of it is it's the autonomy, but as leaders, I think sometimes it's like this sign of weakness. In actuality, every single person up to the CEO needs guidance of some capacity. Do you think that there's something internally, or do you think it works better externally as far as like bringing in coaches and consultants at a certain level? Or is this something that could better be handled internally?
I think that well, I would rather say, why is it like not a given, right? Why is it not a given? Like you're going to be leading this massive healthcare organization. Are you taking care of your wellness? What are the initiatives that you're taking? How much time do you have for yourself? Are you processing things that you went through? If it's a physician, like, are you processing trauma that you went through during medical school, burnout when you were in residency or other training, fellowship?
Right.
So, first of all, are we asking our leaders, are they okay? And then, really, what are they doing to secure that wellness, right? So, that's where that coach comes in. And I think that the options need to be present if that person already has a counselor or coach, somebody they want to be, they want to continue that relationship. I think that relationship should be respected and honestly financially reimbursed. And then if it's they don't have one, well, let's give them options and let's normalize it instead of saying, "Oh, I don't think you're resilient enough. I don't think you're cut out for this job." And so maybe like you need to just, kind of tough it out, really. Um which is terrible.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I come from a different industry. I worked in advertising and marketing and brand strategy, and it's like I have PTSD from working at some agencies that I've been in. So I can only imagine when you are literally physically and emotionally putting your life on the line to save other lives, how taxing that can be. And PTSD is real. These are things that you carry through. And so to say, like, well, I put in 24 hours and I would sleep over, it's not a badge of honor. And I wonder how things would look different if in our um, acceptance letters, not acceptance letter, but our offer letters, that it's like
Mhm.
one of the bullet points as far as your benefit is
Yeah.
a personal assigned health coach, or, health coach of your choosing. But like that is a non-negotiable. That is something you're going to have check-ins once a month. You're going to have, somebody that is along that journey with you. How would that look different?
I think that would be phenomenal because there are 2 points that, you mentioned over here. You touched a little bit about your PTSD and trauma from your prior jobs. So now when we're looking at physicians, it's, we use the term burnout a lot.
Yeah.
Um, a lot of physicians feel triggered by it almost because they've been told like they're not resilient enough, they're not good enough. Like despite this, generally there's the definition surrounding around system issue, but more in favor is this new term that is using more like not a new term, but being used more commonly is moral injury. Being initially studied and labeled with soldiers when they had to go to war and do things that were not ethically aligned with them or morally aligned with them, and they would feel that where in your as a physician or a healthcare worker, it's not that you're actively harming anyone, but it's like when you can't provide that excellent care or that compassionate care that patient needs, and that happens to you over and over again, that feeling of helplessness when you're submitting the 100th prior authorization to get this medicine approved for the patient, which medically and evidence-based wise that person deserves and needs, but they're just not getting because you can't get through past the insurance or the pharma company or something like that, and there's all this paperwork or your work hours are a certain way. So that term moral injury is really like widespread at this point. And I completely want to acknowledge that and have that be something, we talk about more openly.
Lot on the shoulders of healthcare workers. And everyone can complain. We bitch and moan, and here's this and that, but it's like we've got to put forth a solution and really come together as a community. Because you said earlier, it's like it's one thing to come together as a whole and as a collective, but every single one of those individuals matters to how the outcome of that collective operates.
Absolutely.
When it comes to, and I guess in your own opinion, how do you define feeling whole and supported?
Yeah. So for me, it's all of it. It's first of all recognizing I'm not a robot disconnected from my physical and professional and emotional and spiritual well-being because what happens as a physician, I can say that is that systematic dehumanization that before, when you start medical school, it is like you're filled with that energy and that drive. And then it's somewhere along the way with sleeplessness, not having protected time for exercise, all those things, which I can say I'm very happy to hear more residency programs taking initiatives during training to have, to include those things.
Mhm.
But for me, I now my version of wellness includes having, first of all, this connection that exists between my physical body, my spiritual body, my professional health, as well as my personal health, because everything else was drowned out for me while I was working out of burnout,
Mhm.
um, to the point where I don't think you can ask a single, I know this is it's kind of funny, but ask one medical resident that they actually had to go pee and they actually went and did go pee. I don't like somebody asked me that question and I was like, wow, the last time that happened maybe was, like, before medical school. So, it's like that those simple things, and they keep on piling on because you're going to keep delaying your self-care, like, "Oh, I think I have to do XYZ, XYZ." So, when I feel that connection existing between all areas of my life
Mhm.
and not like, this is not some people will refer to it as being very woo, like, I mean, but this is true wellness. True wellness is when you are feeling connected with all parts of you, and so that's how I would define that, and it's also not like, we say we want to do these things, but then we have, like, this learned helplessness that,
Mm.
I don't know, like, how am I going to achieve this? We've mentioned a lot about coaching. There's randomized controlled trials out there now and studies that tell us that coaching works. Coaching is evidence-based to help you get better. But we're gonna, like, not offer that consistently to people. There are things that work, like mindfulness practices. There is so much data behind that work. Now, how are you going to create time to actually support your employees, your healthcare workers to be able to take that in,
Yeah.
because these are evidence based, they work. Now, somebody else will be like, well, this sounds lovely, expensive. If you were to you have to do the comparison, right? When you are losing your one physician, you lose from burnout, the cost to replace that one physician is 2 to 3 times their salary. So it can be like starting from 100,000 going all the way up. So in effect, the healthcare system is losing money. And burnout, it does open a revolving door where people are coming and they're leaving, coming and leaving. And then when are we going to acknowledge the fact that we also have data that tells us that burned out healthcare workers, physicians, and nurses lead to adverse patient outcomes? And what is the cost? The emotional, moral, cost, I mean, let alone the financial cost of those. So these small initiatives towards wellness account to big financial gains, not just like the psychological gains.
You're leaving money on the table when you don't take care of your people. When you don't take care of the whole person that is helping you build this organization, you're losing money.
Mhm.
And the learned helplessness, I mean, there's a few points that you've mentioned here, and one that really got my wheels going though is some of the history behind where this began. I mean, it seems like there's the conditioning that's going on in the school system. So when you're in your fellowship and your residency, I mean, you're learning like you're not going to use the bathroom. Good luck. You're going to sleep all night here. So I mean, how is that sustainable? Is this how it's been throughout history, or was there some period of time that took us to this point of putting this amount of pressure on healthcare workers?
So we're actually at the better part of history right now. As somebody, maybe like my older colleagues would be like, I can't believe they're complaining about this. They actually have work hours. The way I would look at it is now the American College of Graduate Medical Education, ACGME, and all the other sub underneath that training programs are recognizing this. They have work hours in place,
Mm.
and you have to log your work hours. Now, if a program consistently, the residents, the fellows, they're logging their work hours, and there are work hour violations, they are then centrally reported to the ACGME body. So what happens is if So people are working over their work hours, but they might not be logging it because they don't want to sit with their program director and have that conversation like, why are you getting us flagged? And this is not all programs. There are some fabulous programs out there that are doing a great job with their learners. They're because who is teaching these learners? That's also all the physicians, right? They have been through this system.
Right.
And I genuinely believe that everybody wants to care and everybody a medical educator is a very compassionate human being because they have been through that. I have been that person. So when you are with your trainees, you sort of feel what they're going through because you were that person only a few years ago. I don't think anybody intends it to be like this. So it's more of the unspoken language that we're carrying out
Mm.
and the invisible code that we're carrying out, which all good programs now actually say like, hey, log what you're actually doing. Don't just like log what you want us to think.
Right.
So for example,
Okay, we need to know that this is happening.
yeah, exactly. So there was a week I worked 110 hours during residency and I logged it, and then I was called, but it wasn't like a slap on the wrist. It was like, "How can we support you?" So, and how can we, like, shift this conversation? But it did happen, and, I think more than that is this invisible language of you're going to put your patients first, right? So if you are a trainee, a medical trainee, you have about, 20, 22 patients you're actively caring for. I'm talking about inpatient when you're in the hospital and your pager's going off, somebody gets critical. You're going to forget that you didn't drink water, maybe all day. That has happened. And then you will forget the last time you actually went to the bathroom. That's very real. And because also the medical acuity of the things that you're dealing with, genuinely your first concern is always going to be for your patient. It's literally not going to be for yourself. Um, I fell and broke my ankle and I was like, "Oh my god, my entire patient panel is probably going to have to be rescheduled next week." Like, next day, like that's the first question. And this is a story that repeats over and over again because the first thing and I say that with a level of sharing my disconnect, but also a level of pride because that's how much pride we as healthcare workers take in caring for our patients.
The amount of empathy and selflessness that goes into the work that you're doing.
Yes.
I'm learning so much from this conversation, and I think that it's a nice viewpoint and lens into what is happening, and maybe even other ways that us as patients can support healthcare workers. And maybe I'll ask that question: is like, is there a role that patients and even their families can play in creating a more compassionate healthcare system? How can we show up for the people that are showing up for us?
That's a beautiful question, and I would say 100% because we're a team. I think the first thing we need to do is just, like, take a deep breath and recognize it's not patient versus healthcare team.
Yeah.
It it's the both of us are the same team because both of us want the same outcome, which is if you're hurting, we wanna heal you. So recognizing that really brings down the temperature in most situations because when you're on a team, the first principle is for you to communicate openly. So I definitely want, my patients all patients to communicate openly with their teams when they're thinking something that's bothering them
Yeah.
or if something is not going well before jumping to conclusions, have a pause for a benefit of the doubt and communicate because I will tell you 100% the person wearing that white coat or scrubs really and genuinely wants to help you,
Yeah.
and maybe talking to them directly will cause more situations, things to get better, and then communicating in a way like if your team is doing a fabulous job, give them a shout out. If that involves writing a letter, writing, a review, whatever that looks like, give them a shout out. And like the benefit of the doubt, like I would just say in that too, I don't want it to come off as like an excuse for a poor patient encounter or something else that happens because I've been on the other side, and sometimes you do feel like you're unfairly dealt with. It's just so for having communication and just recognizing we're not spiritual beings, we're human beings.
In a
We
spiritual experience.
yeah, we may want to strive for that. That's where all of that happens, we have physical needs, we have emotional needs, just like everybody else, you know?
Just imagine if we all walked around looking at each other as the humans that we are, all trying our darndest. Because that is a conversation that comes up a lot is you need to advocate for your own health. Don't let these doctors tell you this, this, this. You need, and there's a degree of that where it's like, yes, of course, everyone needs to advocate for themselves, but create a partnership. Ask
Yes.
these questions. Create an environment for understanding.
Yes.
And I think the on either side can get to know one another a little bit more and kind of meet each other maybe halfway. I hear that a lot on the patient side of things too, and so it's really valuable to hear it from the physician side, and it makes a whole lot of sense. I mean, these are partnerships that we're creating, and hopefully long term. Because I mean, I don't. I've seen the same doctors for years and decades of my life. I mean, like, my Dr. Patel, like, I'm like, I wanna go have lunch with him. Like, he's just like my favorite person because I felt as though we've created a relationship. And
Yes.
I think sometimes we've gotten to the point where we look at healthcare as transactional versus relationships.
Mhm.
And I think that also comes into play when you go to the doctor once a year when something's
Yeah.
off, rather
Yeah.
than before something's off
Yeah.
and having that opportunity. One of the things that I do wanna go back to is asking the question of, is when it comes to creating a framework or a changes in a reform, I mean, as we're talking, I'm kind of wondering, would the benefit be having somebody full-time that is behind the nurse's station, there on the ground with everybody, and their main goal is to just support the people around them, not necessarily with the patients, but just with the healthcare providers. Would that work? What are some other ideas for
Yeah.
implementing this than getting these PowerPoints out of
Yeah.
here?
I think that that is definitely an interesting idea. I agree. But when they're in the workflow at that time, everyone does it. They are, your nurses are there. They're by your bedside. They're doing it, and the doctors and all your other providers, NPs, PAs, everyone's trying to do their best at that time. We need to create specific times in which they can access wellness. We need and then provide that support, cover it, offer programs as part of your employee packages. Um,
Protect time and financial concern. Or
yes,
no financial concern.
exactly. And then, I mean, even a small thing like why can't we normalize sabbatical healing for our healthcare workers, including physicians? Like if you have an excellent physician who was crisp with burnout, maybe if they took like that good 2 or 3 months to themselves and were able to reconnect with themselves, they'll come back stronger. And it's not a maybe. We now have studies and data that actually shows that you do better job in that way. So normalizing some of those things, I think, would be a really good idea.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we kind of had this industrial revolution, clock in, clock out, operate, production, production. And it's like humans don't work like that. It's been proven that we don't like give people the time and space to recharge and allow them to operate when they're at their best.
Great.
Mm. So much good here. I cannot thank you enough. I've learned a whole lot, and I would love to give our viewers a lens into that. And so, one of the things I want to mention that Dr. Shabir has offered is that listeners who are in the healthcare field or even in training, if you are interested in working with Amna, she is offering a special discounted coaching session when you reference Find Your Flow. So I can't wait for them to, work with you and, where can we find you? Where can they find you to set something up?
Yeah, they're welcome to find me on LinkedIn. It's the same name that you see on the screen right now. They can connect with me over there. They can find me on Instagram. It's dr.amnashabbir, my first and last name. And then they're welcome to even send me a direct email, which is also dramnashabir@gmail.com. Um, Reach out, connect. Things get better. Like it can get better for sure.
Yeah. Thank you so very much. And I hope, viewers out there, whether you are in the healthcare space, you work in a different industry, here's a very small and short lens into some of the problems and issues that are facing our healthcare workers. And just want to give a big shout out to all of the healthcare workers out there that we very much see you all and appreciate you. So thank you for tuning in. And I'm going to look forward to chatting with you again soon.
Thank you.